So for each of the major holidays, we read a section of the Bible in addition to the regular Torah reading. For instance, on Yom Kippur, we read the book of Jonah. At Purim, of course, we read the book of Esther. And on Shavuot, we read the book of Ruth. Clearly, Ruth is the protagonist of the book. Her story is remarkable. We're only going to study just a little bit of the remarkable wonders of Ruth. And I want to actually focus a little bit more on the characters of Naomi and Boaz as they appear earlier in the stories, in chapter 1 and in chapter 2. And that's in no way to diminish the import and impact of Ruth, but I really wanted for us to talk about the idea of belonging and welcoming. And I think the characters of Naomi and Boaz in some ways create very parallel and complementary avenues for creating a sense of belonging. And in some ways, they're actually foils for one another with how they do it. So I really want to focus most of our conversations on Naomi and on Boaz. But obviously, we have to talk a little bit about Ruth herself as well in order to fully appreciate, in particular, what Boaz offered. The text that I'm using, the translation that I'm using is from Sepharia.org. We can talk more about Sepharia another time. It's certainly a wonderful, wonderful resource that we have. So the book of Ruth is 4 chapters. We're not going to go through all 4 chapters, don't worry. But here at the beginning of chapter 1, in the days when the chieftains ruled, there was a famine in the land. This is a common motif that recurs throughout the Tanakh, that recurs throughout the Bible. And a man of Bethlehem in Judah, with his wife and 2 sons, went to reside in the country of Moab. We don't have to talk too much about it now, but suffice it to know that Moab is considered one of the big enemies of the Israelite people. I'm here in Wisconsin. I'm born and raised in Wisconsin. It's not akin to me becoming a Chicago Bears football fan, right? These are really kind of enemies and combatants according to the Bible. So there's a famine in the land. Judah, his wife, and 2 sons moved to Moab. I know that this says Judah, his wife, and 2 sons, and doesn't name Naomi here. And this might be a conversation for another time about gender and gender equity and equality in the Bible. For the moment, let's keep going. So the man's name is Elimelech. I'm sorry, Elimelech was the husband. They lived in Judah. Elimelech, now his wife's name is Naomi. His 2 sons were Machlon and Chilion. They go to Moab and they remain there. Tragedy strikes in verse 3 when Elimelech, Naomi's husband, dies. And she is left with her 2 sons. So now we have Naomi, who with her now deceased husband has left her homeland, moved to Moab with her 2 sons in order to flee from famine. Naomi's 2 sons, Machlon and Chilion, each marry a Moabite woman, Orpah and Ruth, and then they lived about 10 years. These 2 sons, Machlon and Chilion, then also die. Things are not going well, certainly for Naomi's family, certainly for Naomi. And so this woman is widowed. Both of her sons have died, and she still has 2 daughters-in-law. So then she starts with her daughters-in-law in verse 6 to return from the country of Moab because she now hears that God has taken note of God's people and the famine is over. So the famine is now over in her homeland of Israel. She's here living in Moab, deceased husband, 2 dead sons with her daughters-in-law, so she decides to go home. It's hard to tell if this is a Bible story or a Disney story so far. Anyway, verse 7, she goes with her 2 daughters-in-law. She leaves the place that she'd been living 10 years, not a small amount of time. They set out on the road back to the land of Judah. Now, Naomi then says to her 2 daughters-in-law, and they're wandering, they're walking back to the land of Judah. She says to her 2 daughters-in-law, turn back, each of you, to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that each of you find security in the house of a husband. And she kissed them farewell. They all broke into weeping. Now, one of the beautiful delights of the Bible, one of my teachers and at rabbinical school at JTS, Rabbi Dr. Robbie Harris, said that the Bible is delightfully ambiguous. And I love that phrase. I've been quoting him ever since I first heard him say that, maybe 22 years ago. I don't remember the exact time. The Bible is ambiguous. The Bible, for instance, almost never gives us emotion. It almost never gives us reason. Why does Naomi say this? What is she feeling? What is she thinking? What are her hopes? What are her wants? What are her needs? Right? All we have are the words of what she says. And in some ways that's ambiguous. And a lot of times in life we get frustrated by ambiguity. But in the context of the Bible, it's actually delightful, because this very ambiguity creates space for various interpretations. Right? I'm looking at my bookshelf over here. I have like an 7, 8 foot high bookshelf, 7, 8 foot wide, I don't know, full of Jewish books. My other half of the bookshelf has, other books that aren't necessarily Jewish, at least 2/3 of it, right? The reason we have so many books and commentaries and interpretations is exactly precisely because the Bible is ambiguous. I say all of that because I am going to start to offer a bit of a narrative that I would like to suggest behind what Naomi is saying and why she is saying it. And I wanted to give this preamble because I'm not right. I mean, I might be onto something, I might be wrong, but I'm not right. Because in Judaism, there isn't a right and a wrong. We might have heard the quip, if you have 2 Jews, you have 3 opinions. The only rule for interpreting biblical text according to Judaism is that you have to be able to defend your interpretation based on the text itself. So I'm going to offer one particular perspective here. Please feel free, if you have others, again, pop them into the chat. If you read this a little bit differently, if you're not quite buying what I'm saying, or if you think it makes sense, please feel free to pop it in the chat. I don't want you to walk away saying, oh, Rabbi Steigman said it's this, so it must be this. This is simply the lens that I am taking tonight in the context of belonging. So again, back to verse 8, Naomi says to her 2 daughters-in-law, turn back each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and me. I have no reason to think that Naomi is being anything other than sincere. Right? This is thousands of years ago, back in the day where society was gendered. I say that with no pride, right? Back in the day when society was gendered, right? It wasn't the case. Like, what are these daughters-in-law? What are Orpah and Ruth going to do with their mother-in-law in a strange land? They're not going to earn an income. It's less desirable to marry a widow than it is to marry someone who's never been married before. Again, we're talking thousands of years ago. So what are you going to do? Just sit and waste away? No, go home. Go back to your family, right? And right, may the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. I have no reason to suspect that Naomi is being anything other than sincere. You've been wonderful daughters-in-law. You've taken care of me. You looked after me. You stayed with me even after your husbands have died. And then she ends with a blessing in verse 9. May the Lord grant that each of you find security in the house of a husband. And again, I don't want to keep glossing over the gendered language. On the other hand, I don't want that to be the focus of this conversation. Maybe we can do that another time. But again, this is common kindness thousands of years ago. Right? Go, remarry, have a good, happy, fruitful life. She kisses them farewell. They break into weeping. This could be the end of the story. But in verse 10, they break into weeping, this being the 2 daughters-in-law, and they say to her, no, we will return with you to your people. Now is where we can start to get a little unsure of Orpah and Ruth's intent. Perhaps they're being incredibly sincere. No, 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 we want to go with you. Or perhaps this is the game that we play. I'll pay today. No, 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 I'll pay. No, 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 I'll pay. No, 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 I'll pay. We're not entirely sure. Again, either one of these could be argued. But whichever their intent was, no, they say, we're going to go back with you. And to some degree, it almost doesn't matter in this conversation if they're being sincere or if they're playing the game. And then in verse 11, Naomi replies, turn back, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I more sons in my body who might be husbands for you? Turn back, my daughters, for I am too old to be married. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I were married tonight and I also bore sons, should you wait for them to grow up? Should you, on their account, debar yourselves from marriage? Oh no, my daughters, my lot is far more bitter than yours, for the hand of the Lord has struck out against me. We'll talk about that in a moment. David asked a question in the chat. Why no grandchildren after 10 years? It's a great question, David. And the book of Ruth in the text itself does not give an answer to that. Though one common theme within the Bible is barrenness of the matriarchs and of the women. Whether that was the case here, I don't know. Whether the sons were young and they married early, I don't know. That's always a question, David, that has been on my mind. The text itself does not give a direct answer for that. So here Naomi is saying to the daughters, look, what are you going with me for? I have nothing left to give you, right? I'm not going to have any more kids. I'm not going to have any more sons. You're not going to be able to get married, right? And even if somehow I get married again, and even if somehow I bear children, and even if somehow the children that I bear, if I happen to get married, happen to be boys, and I know this is gendered in gender binary language, right? What are you going to do? Wait 15 years until they're adults? Right? This is ludicrous. You'll be too old then. No, my lot is far more bitter than yours, for the hand of the Lord has struck out against me. Now, again, this could be this plaintive petition, deep loss, sadness. This is terrible. This is horrible. I don't want you to have to suffer. This also could be the kind of stereotypical, oh, my life is terrible. Everything is bad. Now, again, she's had some surah. She's had her own struggles here, right? But she's saying, look, my life is bitter. Why are you going to stay with me when my life is so bitter? Ellen also responds to David that Ruth gave birth to sons with Boaz and is the great-great-grandmother of King David. Absolutely. And again, playing on that theme of barrenness, the barrenness that's a motif throughout the Bible usually is not permanent. It's usually a temporary barrenness, and ultimately the women are able to conceive. Which again, so this would actually continue that biblical motif that really began all the way in Genesis. So once again, Naomi is saying, look, there's absolutely no reason for you to come back with me. They broke into weeping again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law farewell, but Ruth clung to her. Right? So Orpah leaves and goes home. On the surface, I cannot impugn Orpah at all. I cannot look at Orpah and say, oh, you should have stuck around. That's not nice of you. You're abandoning her. I cannot impugn Orpah at all for returning home. And again, this could be a different conversation, whether or not Orpah had a different obligation, but this is her mother-in-law. You know, it seems like Orpah has tried a couple of times saying, I'm going to stay with you. Naomi's made a compelling argument. Orpah kisses her mother-in-law goodbye. It seems like this is sincere weeping and farewell. Ruth, however, clung to her. What a powerful verb. Ruth stayed with her. Ruth remained with her. Ruth continued on her journey with her. Ruth clung to her. Right? Ruth clung to Naomi. And now she said, this is Naomi speaking to Ruth, see, your sister-in-law has returned to her people and her gods. Go follow your sister-in-law. Go. Orpah has already gone back. You don't owe me anything. There's no guilt in you leaving. Go. All right, so here we have a picture of Naomi. Again, I have a hard time reading anything other than sincerity in Naomi. I live in Milwaukee. One of my dear friends is actually from New York. He grew up in Westchester. Ironically, a few minutes from my first pulpit in Westchester, though we only knew each other living here in Milwaukee. He says that Wisconsin is the passive-aggressive capital of the world. right? So it's very, very possible that there's a passive aggressiveness here in Naomi. No, no, go, go, go. I don't want that. You should worry about me. It's certainly very possible. But even if that's the case, I have a hard time reading anything other than genuine love from Naomi to Orpah and to Ruth. I think she wants what's best for them, whether she's being direct and sincere, passive aggressive. I think she really wants what is best for them. Sophie, thank you. I'm going to get to that in just one moment. That's a great, great, great prescient comment. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Sophie. Right? That I think Naomi wants what's best for Orpah and Ruth. Right? Go, please go. Do what is right. In a sense of belonging, on the one hand, this seems like the antithesis of belonging. Go, go, go. As Sophie has prompted, it's like she's turning away Ruth 3 times. Go, go, go. You would imagine if you want to welcome someone, I don't open up my front door and say, go, close the door. Go, go, and only then let them in. That's not inviting. That's not welcoming. That's not belonging. But again, the reason that I bring this in the sense of belonging is because my read of Naomi is deep sincerity and love. And when we talk about belonging, I think it's more than just the words that you use, right? For example, please come in. I'm so glad you're here. What a pleasant surprise. Or, oh, hi, I didn't expect you. Yeah, I'd love for you to come in. Same words. One person is going to feel far more welcome than the other. And in the case of belonging, I think one of, if not the most important first step in fostering a sense of belonging is that I care about you, you care about me, we care about each other. In other words, I think there's actually far more belonging if I can say to a person whom I love, with love, I am so glad you stopped by. I love seeing you. You might have not been able to pick a worse time, and I'd love to be able to call you in a couple of hours and check in. That can be far more a sense of belonging than inviting somebody in when we have a sense of love, when we have a sense of care for the other. This is that sense that Naomi, I believe, is bringing to Ruth. I care about you. All right, I'm going to take a brief pause here. I'm going to start scrolling through some of the chat. I see some questions and some comments. And if other people have quick reflections here, I'm happy to do that. As we're pausing with Naomi's creating a sense of belonging by really demonstrating a sense of care, compassion, and love. I referenced Sophie's comment before, thank you again, that according to tradition in Judaism, when someone wants to enter into the Jewish fold, there's a tradition of saying no 3 times, turning them away 3 times. And the only way that I can get a sense of doing that is if you do it the way Naomi did, with love, right? You know, the idea is, you want to be a Jew? Are you sure? It ain't always so easy being a Jew. You're really sure? Okay, if this is what you want, then we'd love to have you. I think it has to be done with the love that I think exudes from Naomi, but that is part of the tradition. Thank you for the kind words. Those of you who are saying some kind words, thank you very much. E-Wolf reinforces what we were just talking about here. So thank you for that. Julie Ann notes that Moab, we talked about this earlier, the Moabites were enemies of the Jews. And certainly the fact, I believe, Julie, and I don't know if it's Julia or Julia Ann, which you prefer, the idea that the Moabites and the Israelites are known and sworn enemies, I think is only going to speak that much more highly to Boaz when we speak about him in the 2nd chapter. So hold on to that, because the fact that Ruth is a Moabite only is going to put Boaz's actions in, I believe, a more favorable light. Also, by the way, someone referenced it earlier that Ruth is considered the great ancestor, or one of the great ancestors of King David. So if anyone ever says that someone who is a Jew by choice, like Ruth is, we're going to get to that in a moment, or that someone who comes from a different peoples or nationality has a different or lesser place in Judaism, Ruth is one of the great ancestors of King David. To me, that is the beginning and the end of the proof text that Judaism welcomes anyone and everyone equally, at least in theory. Sometimes we can do a better job in reality. Naomi knows that the plight of a widow is not easy, right? So perhaps she's right again. So this is yet another sign of kindness and love that she's offering her daughters-in-law, more support about the sincerity that we see in Naomi. We've had a couple of people who with the names Julia and Julia Ann. Thank you. Okay, thanks for letting me know. It is Julia. And then Sophie adds, there is a cultural face-saving imperative here. You have to say I'm going with you the first time. That proves you care. Yes. Oh, okay. So this could be a cultural thing in particular from the Middle East as well. That there's kind of that standard practice that you kind of have to say, oh, Julia Ann. Okay, so okay, Julia Ann. Thank you. That there's a cultural safe-facing practice in the Middle East. Thank you for adding that. That there are times when you do have to, the first time has to kind of be the opposite if you want to show some level of sincerity and care. So thank you for all of your comments. All right, the first section of our learning really centered on Naomi, what I believe is her sincerity. Oh, David, the great Rabbi Akiva's parents were Jews by choice. Yes, thank you for adding that note as well. We talked about Naomi. We talked about her sincerity. We talked about fostering a sense of belonging through deep, sincere care and or love for the other person. Naomi has returned home. I see no reason to impugn her for that. Now, after Naomi once again says, leave, 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 go home, in verse 16, Ruth replies, do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me, if anything but death parts me from you. We could spend an entire 1 hour shiur, entire 1 hour learning together, really dissecting and trying to appreciate the depths of Ruth's words. Allow me, please, to say them this way. I'm not alone. The rabbis really look at yes, Ellen, exactly. The rabbis really look at Ruth as the model Jew by choice and the first genuine public Jew by choice. Some suggest that perhaps Moses' father-in-law Jethro ended up being a Jew by choice, but they really look at this as the first essentially conversion in the Bible. And this is in many ways the paradigm for anyone who would like to be a Jew by choice, right? Wherever you go, I will go. That, in some ways, I think that's a little bit less about Judaism than it is about her devotion to Naomi, right? You are my mother-in-law. You are my mother. I am with you. Wherever you go, I go. If you stay in Judah, if you go back to Moab, if you go to Texas, if you move to Madagascar, wherever you're going, I know they weren't all around then, don't worry, right? Wherever you go, I am going to go, right? Wherever you live, I will live. But here we get to the real model part. Your people shall be my people. And this first part says a lot. Whatever the practices are of wherever you are, your people, that will be my people. I cast my peoplehood with you, right? Whatever your customs are my customs. In some ways, that is half of the conversion, right? I am going to essentially live the life of an Israelite, of a Jew, because I'm going to live with you in Judah. So I'm going to live the life of a Jew. And then the second part, your God, my God. I'm not just walking the walk, I'm also talking the talk. And I know I have inverted the typical saying, right? Because normally you say it's not just about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk. But it's also one thing to say it's one thing for Ruth's actions to be part of the people, but it's another thing for her to adopt the faith and the belief herself. That's what she's doing here. She's saying these are not actions for show. This is not an outward exercise to demonstrate to everyone. This is an internal belief, an internal choice that I am making. I am fully with you, Naomi, physically, wherever you go. In terms of practice, whatever you do, and also in terms of belief. That is everything that I am adopting. And again, this really could be a shiur into and of itself. But so I don't want to minimize this, because this is such remarkable passion, sincerity, authenticity, and devotion, which really is the model for anyone who wants to really be a Jew by choice. So, but I want to stop here just in case there are a couple of comments, and I see that there are a couple here. Jackie adds, I try my hardest to be kind and compassionate to all. Born in Moldova and adopted in the synagogue is very wonderful. You know, Jackie, I thank you so much for sharing that. I love hearing those stories, because I'm proud to be Jewish. And I think a lot of times we do a wonderful job. And I know we have a lot of work to do in terms of welcoming people, in terms of equity and justice. And I'm sure we all know stories of times when that's not the case. And I also love hearing stories, Jackie, of times when people have really felt welcome and have felt embraced, because all the efforts that we put into trying to do even just a little bit better, it's always wonderful and affirming to know that there are times when we still are doing a pretty good job. And I'm really glad that that has been your experience, Jackie. Thank you for sharing that. Caroline, compassion to immigrants, without a doubt. I mean, look, the Jewish people, you don't have to be the world's greatest historian to know the nomadic history of the Jewish people and the immigrant experience that has been replete within the Jewish historical experience. And the Torah says 36 times more than anything else, you shall trust the stranger, you shall care for the stranger, because you were a stranger in a strange land, right? It says that 36 times more than anything else. Right, and this is yet another immigrant story. So thank you, Caroline, for bringing that up. Correct, Naomi. There was no conversion. There was no formal conversion in the time of Ruth. So this was effectively a de facto conversion. You're correct that there wasn't a formal conversion process in the time of Ruth. All right, Ellen. Might Naomi have agreed to have Ruth join her only after she rejected Moab's gods? It's certainly possible that Naomi was only willing to accept Ruth's offer to join after this statement. One could be because she's offered 3 times and she felt she's done her job. And another could be, look, you know, sometimes, Ruth, you don't know what you don't know. I know where we're going. They ain't gonna welcome a Moabite. Right? So maybe this is yet another act of kindness and love. And I hadn't thought about it this way, Ellen, so thank you for sharing it. Another act of kindness and love that Naomi was offering. In her head, she said, once Ruth said, I'm adopting your culture and your God, then and only then was Ruth willing to say, okay, then you can come with me, because she thought there'd be a greater chance of acceptance. Thank you. Rana talks about the parallels in this story with Israelites who converted. Absolutely, with all of their heart and soul, absolutely. David asks about the matriarchs in early stories. Again, in those days when Isaac went and married well, first of all, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob actually married from within the extended family. So they were actually already kind of part of the Israelite clan in that regard. That Noah and Job weren't Jews, Caroline asks. Well, they weren't Jews in the sense that Jews didn't exist as Jews in that sense, right? The nomenclature of Jews is actually a slightly a later nomenclature. Certainly Noah wasn't Jewish because Abraham is considered the first Jew. Is one of the reasons we read the book on Shavuot, because Shavuot is considered by some to be the time that the Israelites actually became the Jews, And here we are reading that that Ruth has become a Jew by choice. Absolutely, Ellen. Absolutely, absolutely. Look, on Shavuot, we accept receiving the Torah. We accept receiving God's teachings into our hearts and minds in our practice, and that's exactly what Ruth is doing. So thank you, Ellen. Absolutely. Sherry, do we know anything about Ruth's? Sherry, I know, and we know the exact same thing, right? Which is exactly what the text has told us. So there might be commentaries out there which talk more about that, but the story of Ruth in the Bible itself talks nothing about their marriage. All right. David, yes, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel were Arameans, but this is the people from which Abraham ultimately came. So that's why I say it's part of his clan, rather than part of his faith. But they were all part of the clan. But in those days also, when a woman married a husband, she adopted his practice. And again, that is how it was. I think only a couple of more, and then we'll keep going, because I do want to talk to Boaz. We still have time. Kat shares that she's a Latina convert and that everyone has been nice enough, but microaggression is still strong, and that sometimes there's a cliquishness within those who are raised Jewish. And Kat, I appreciate you sharing your experience too, because that's an experience I hear quite a bit as well, right? That oftentimes there are good intentions, that there's a kind heart, that there are all of these things, but that there are still microaggressions, because we as people and we as Jews still need to learn language that reflects the sense of welcoming that we want to embody, that we're seeing here in the book of Ruth. And sometimes our intent is farther ahead than our language and our actions. And Kat, again, I think I put it in here before. If you're comfortable sharing it, certainly not publicly, but I would be interested if you're comfortable sharing some of that, because I also want to help learn too. And maybe you'll help me with awareness, but I do also have conversations with other faith leaders locally and within the Jewish world. And if you're comfortable sharing your experience with me, I just popped my email in there. I would appreciate hearing more, so that I and we can become more culturally attuned and aware, and hopefully do a much better job. Cliques are not unique to Judaism, by the way. My son is a freshman in high school. My daughter's in middle school. So cliques are not unique to Judaism. And then finally, Linda offers that, oh, wonderful. You're having your first meeting with the rabbi in a few days. I don't know if you're going to receive the 3 rejections. I don't know which denomination you're looking into. You don't have to certainly share here. And again, you can always email me as well, but certainly within different denominations, there are different approaches. It might be that the rejection would be more of so tell me why this is what you want to do. Or have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? So it might be a kind of soft prompt more so than a formal rejection. But if you do receive rejections, now at least you know the origin of it, and hopefully you don't take it too personally or as a sign of unwelcoming. So, all right, I'm going to take a little drink of water. We talked about Naomi, we've talked about Ruth, and then Naomi sees how determined she is to go with her, and then they go to Bethlehem. All right. Now we're going to skip ahead. Oh, I will say the last line of the first chapter of Ruth says they arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. That's the exact time historically that the holiday of Shavuot happens. The holiday of Shavuot, in addition to celebrating receiving the Torah, is also the barley harvest. The holidays in the Torah both celebrate a theological or a monumental event. They also are aligned with the agricultural cycle. So this is also celebrating the barley harvest. Chapter 2. Now Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side, a man of substance. He was well off, he was well-to-do, of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Ruth the Moabite, it's fascinating that the Bible says it this way, because we're also taught that when someone converts to Judaism, we don't bring up and remind of the fact that they were a Jew by choice. Right? So-and-so is a Jew by choice. I don't walk up to them and say, hello, so-and-so. It's so good to see you, Jew by choice. I'm so glad you converted. What's going on? Right? I mean, I don't do that all the time. Right? You're just not supposed to do that. I think here it's more for emphasis, and this is some of the comments that many of you have brought up, that Moabites and Israelites don't really get along. I want to read that favorably. Maybe I'm being a little bit too generous here. But Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, I want to go to the fields and glean among the ears of grain behind someone who may show me kindness. Right? I don't want to just sit around. I want to get a job. I want to meet people. And Naomi says, yes, daughter, go. Again, not daughter-in-law, daughter. Right? Yes, daughter, go. And off she went. She came and gleaned in a field behind the reapers, and as luck would have it, by the way, I have a belief that anytime that the Bible says as luck would have it, it's not really luck. I think in the biblical universe, when something is luck, that's actually divine action. We don't have to have a conversation about theology here. We don't have to have a conversation about who wrote the Bible. Did God write the Bible? Is everything preordained? Is the Bible a historical record? But if we just enter into the biblical mindset for a world, whether we believe that it is literal or if we just want to suspend disbelief within the biblical theology, luck isn't luck. Luck is God doing something, right? So as God luck would have it, as divine luck would have it, the place that she happens to go to glean happens to be a piece of land that happens to belong to Boaz, who happens to be part of Elimelech's family, who happens to be the deceased husband of Naomi, who happens to be the woman who Ruth is following and whose people Ruth is following, now a people of whose God Ruth is now adopted, right? So as luck would have it, the very Boaz, who is Naomi's kinsman, owns the land on which Ruth happens to go gleaning. Presently, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem. I don't know if he had business in Bethlehem. I don't know if he has multiple farms. I don't know if he has multiple homes. He was out of town, comes in from Bethlehem, and he greets the reapers. The Lord be with you. And they responded, the Lord bless you. Not an uncommon greeting back then. Shalom aleichem, aleichem shalom. Right? We have this in Israel. Sometimes we have this in some Arab-speaking countries, right? Peace be upon you. Here it's invoked in God's name. And again, I have no reason to suspect that Boaz really is an aristocrat who's saying, the Lord be with you, just doing his duty. I have no reason to suspect that. I have no reason not to think that he is genuinely greeting the reapers and that his reapers are genuinely greeting him. And if I'm going to go with this level of sincerity, then again, right, everyone should treat everyone with kindness and dignity, right? Part of that recurring theme, this is yet another manifestation. Boaz said to the servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose girl is that? Right? I see somebody new. By the way, we can also say this is a nice testament to Boaz, right? When you own a factory, you don't always know every single person who works there, right? But here Boaz comes back and right away says, hey, there's a face I don't know. That means he does know all the faces of his employees. Hopefully he knows their names and a little bit about them too, but the text doesn't tell us. But if nothing else, at least he knows who works for him. And then the servant in charge of the reapers replies, she is a Moabite girl who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers. She has been on her feet ever since she came this morning. She has rested but little in the hut. Okay, right? She's a hard worker. Boaz then says to Ruth, listen to me, daughter. Right? A familial affection here, right? And clearly Boaz, this is not a new story for Boaz, right? I mean, he and Naomi are mishpacha, right? So this is not a new story. He just hasn't happened to meet with you. Listen to me, daughter. Do not go glean in another field. Don't go elsewhere, but stay here close to my girls. Keep your eyes on the field they are reaping and follow them. I have ordered the men not to molest you. And when you are thirsty, go to the jars and drink some of the water that the men have drawn. All right. So I am embarrassingly just going to ignore the line, I have ordered the men not to molest you, because I have enough problems with that. And I don't want to I'll derail myself for a long time trying to unpack that. But on the macro sense, Boaz is certainly saying to Ruth, hey, not only are you welcome here, I want you to be here, right? I can look out for you. The other women who are here, they can look out for you too. We can help take care of you. We can help make sure you're safe. We can help make sure you're welcome, right? This is the first act of welcoming that Boaz offers to Ruth, right? I know who you are. I know what's going on. We're going to find that out in just a moment, right? You are welcome here. You are welcome, and we're going to show you the ropes. We're going to do things. We're going to treat you as one of our own, right? Imagine you walk into a synagogue for the first time and someone says, hey, you are welcome here. It's as if you've been here every single Shabbos your entire life. My seat is your seat is my seat. Sit wherever you want. I get up every 5 minutes and schmooze because I'm a little bit bored and I don't sit very still. Come and schmooze with me any single time. It's never an interruption. And I was offered an aliyah, the third aliyah. Here, you take the aliyah from me. Please go up, right? Imagine that experience. Anytime I'm here at the shul, you're welcome at the shul. And if you have any questions, just ask anybody here. We're all going to look out for you. Right? Imagine if that's the experience. Imagine if someone comes to a synagogue for the first time, and after 15 minutes, they're thinking to themselves, oh, this is awful. Everyone comes and says hello to me and welcome me. I don't have a chance to daven for a minute. Right? People are just being kind. Right? Imagine if that were the problem of us being welcoming. Boaz is saying, you are welcome here. Stay close to the girls who have worked here a long time. They'll show you the ropes. They're going to show you what to do from day one. Employees, is Ruth an employee, or is she one of the poor people who glean what the actual employees have left behind? That's a great question, Sharon. That's a great question, and I'm actually not 100% sure. So if you have studied that or read something, I'm happy to hear your response and take that, because I'm actually not 100% sure. I suspect you might be right that she's actually not. I think you both might be right, Sharon and Sophie, that she's not a reaper. She's not actually an employee. She is someone who gleans what the reapers leave behind. According to the Torah, when I'm reaping things, if I drop something, I am not allowed to pick it up. I am forbidden for picking it up. And that has to be left for the gleaners, who are usually people who might not have the financial resources to get food otherwise. So I think you might be right. That's a great distinction. And I had not been attuned enough to that. Thank you. It was Sophie and Sharon. Thank you both. So she is one of the gleaners, not one of the reapers. Thank you all. Thank you all. Okay, and whenever you're thirsty, go drink. Now, verse 10, she prostrated herself with her face to the ground, and she said to him, why are you so kind to me to single me out when I'm a foreigner? Right? I mean, there are lots of gleaners here, not reapers, lots of gleaners here. Why are you singling me out? Especially because I'm a foreigner. And here's what Boaz says in verse 11. I have been told all that you did for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and the land of your birth and came to a people you had not known before. May the Lord reward your deeds. May you have a full recompense from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have sought refuge. Right? I know what you did for Naomi. If there's an example of above and beyond, you are the model for it. Right? I know what you did. And not only did you do this for Naomi, you adopted her people, her culture, her custom. You came to a strange land, a land where your people are hated. You did all of this. May the Lord reward your deeds. I don't think Boaz is saying, and I am the agent of the Lord's reward. I don't think he's trying to say ego here. He's saying, look, God should reward you. And if God is going to be rewarding you, the least that I can do is help you out too. Right? So just another act, I believe, of sincere kindness and welcoming. You are making a positive, powerful choice. The least I can do is extend a hand of kindness and welcoming. Right? You are making a powerful, positive choice to cast your lot with the Jewish people. And there are some people on the chat room who have shared that. The least I can do, literally the least I can do, is try to welcome you. I'm so glad you're here. What can I do to help? Can I introduce you to someone who you might get along with? That's what Boaz is doing. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? And yet for so many of us, it feels so hard as an action, right? You want to be part of the Jewish people? Wow. I'm speaking personally. I was born and raised a Jew. I love being a Jew, right? In some ways, I deserve less credit for being Jewish today than someone who's a Jew by choice. Less is the wrong word. I receive different credit, right? But there's a unique credit for someone who chooses Judaism. Right? Every person who's a Jew chooses Judaism every single day. But there's something unique about someone of a different faith practice who chooses Judaism. The least that our community can do is say, we want you here. And that doesn't only apply to Jews by choice. Anyone who wants to do Jewish in any form, how can we do anything other than what Boaz is doing here? Oh, you want to do this and this? Well, you really should be doing this and this. You're coming to shul today, that's fine, but I haven't seen you for a month. You're going to come back next week too, right? These messages don't help. They don't do anything. Anytime any person wants to do Jewish, I think it is our and my responsibility to say thank you. How can I help? My quick promo is that's why I founded my organization, Own Your Judaism, right? Because one of my taglines is really helping Jews do Jewish, helping people do Jewish. If you want to do Jewish, I want to help. And I don't want to say I'm directly inspired by Boaz because that would be a little bit unfair. But it's this kind of practice that people like Boaz are offering that have inspired me. Anyone wants to do Jewish, I don't care your birth, nationality, gender, orientation, identity. I don't care if you were born and raised a Jew. I don't care if you are a Jew by choice. I don't care if you know nothing about Judaism and have never done anything Jewish before. Great. How can I help? Imagine a Jewish universe in which that is the constant refrain. How can I help? How can I support you? How can we make things easeful, joyful, and social? Right? Those are the taglines of my organization. That's what I want to do. It doesn't mean that Judaism is easy. Right? Ruth's choice is not an easy choice. Right? It doesn't mean everything has to be catered to your whims and wants and needs at every single moment. But imagine if we said, how can I help? Every single time. And this is a hard choice. It's a powerful choice. It's an impactful choice. But the welcoming part should be easeful. You doing something with the community, that should be joyful. Meeting people, that should be social. The choice to do something Jewish, whether you were born and raised a Jew, whether you're a Jew by choice, whether you're not Jewish, that's a hard choice. But the welcoming, the belonging, that should be easy. And if you say, look, I've been doing Jewish for a while and I want to try something else, I want to go back to another faith practice, I want to explore, you're welcome back anytime. How can I support you in that? I know it seems counterintuitive for a rabbi to say, how can I support you in that? But how is it different? Right? This is the Naomi model. Belonging is caring and love. I care about you. We care about each other. We're not going to go more in the text. Please know that Boaz then invites Ruth. Essentially, it's on a date. Boaz invites Ruth on a date. They go on a date. Eventually, they get married. You don't have to marry every single person who walks into the Jewish community as a sign of welcoming. We don't have to marry every single buddy, right? It doesn't have to be that much. We don't even necessarily have to be best friends with everybody. I think I might have seen a couple look at each other and smile. I wonder if that's your narrative and story, right? We don't necessarily have to like every single person because let's be honest, not every single person likes every single person. We can be welcoming every single time. All right, we have a few minutes left. I just want to jump back to a couple of the comments that have come up. Yes, Donna offers she was she was a widow and no children to care for. She had no protection, so she had to glean and care for herself. Yes, there are basic Noahide laws. Offers her a blessing too. Allie, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm sorry to hear that that is your experience. Hopefully, this is one slightly different, more positive experience. And again, like I've said, like I've said to everyone before, if you want to reach out, please feel free to reach out. Sometimes I'm great at responding right away. Sometimes it takes me a few days. I know Matthew is on the Zoom. I'm about a week and a half behind on an email to you, for which I apologize. I will get back to you, and I certainly will help do my best as well. If you are looking for a community, just a couple of more. Sharon, yes, thank you. Right, you're just following up on the conversation. Thank you all for your thanks. Yes, we're all worthy of blessing. Exactly, right? That's Genesis chapter 1. Everyone is created in God's image. We're all worthy of blessing. Jackie, thank you for sharing more of your story as well. And thank you all again for the kind words. Julia, how do you find more events with me? I hope it's okay if I answer, Becky. But if you go to ownyourjudaism.org, or either email me and I'll add you to my email list, or just go to ownyourjudaism.org. Just a couple of hours ago, Evan, who is a friend of mine, helps me with my website, finally got the subscription line tab at the very bottom of my website working. It hadn't been working, but if you can go to the website and subscribe to my email list. It's about once a week. It's not inundated with emails, so you can get more. Or you can follow Own Your Judaism on Facebook or on Instagram. You're going to be able to get them that way as well. So there's email through the website. You can email me, Facebook, Instagram. Just look for Own Your Judaism, and okay, yeah, I'm not quite going to get to all of the comments here. Yeah, David's offering a comment. Thank you all for the kind words. Oh, Sharon, you popped the contact info in. Thank you so much, Sharon. I appreciate that. So thank you really all very, very, very much for coming. Thank you for participating. Thank you for spending part of your Shavuot with me and helping me welcome the holiday in a meaningful way for me. I hope that this was meaningful, at least in some small way, for you as well. And again, a huge thank you to Becky and a huge thank you to My Jewish Learning for inviting me to be here and for hosting and putting all of this on. It's really through My Jewish Learning's efforts that this is all happening. So thank you, Becky. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you so much for teaching us about the Book of Ruth. Thanks so much to everybody who joined, especially those of you who are so active in the chat. It was really wonderful to see such a great discussion. I wanted to offer a couple more resources about the Book of Ruth. Now that you've had this introduction, I'm posting here in the chat. My Jewish Learning offers a special email series called Journey into the Book of Ruth, which will take you a little deeper into the text. So please sign up for that. And I also wanted to let you know, as you heard, the Book of Ruth is traditionally read on Shavuot, and we will be live streaming a reading of the Book of Ruth on the My Jewish Learning Facebook page Saturday morning. I think it's at 10 a.m. And so sign on for that, and you can hear the whole thing read then. Again, thank you so much to Rabbi Moshe Steigman. It was a pleasure to hear you and have you back with My Jewish Learning, and I wish you all a Chag Sameach.
Thank you all.